Picnic baskets aren't allowed up here. Tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. Jessica Alden's laughter cut through the hush of Aero Nordic's business class cabin like a sharp edge. Nana Ellis paused beneath the overhead bin, toes planted firmly on the soft carpet. Her canvas tote, the one holding the homemade pecan pies she'd baked that morning, slid from her fingers and thudded to the floor. Jessica's perfect bun bobbed as she turned, arms crossed. Her uniform gleamed under the cabin's soft lighting, every button polished. Around them, a handful of passengers chuckled. A young banker's lips curled in amusement. A businessman snapped a photo for his social media story. Nana could feel the warmth of their eyes, curious, superior, dismissive. She bent to retrieve her tote, her slender fingers brushing the strap. Lifting it to her lap, Nana settled into her window seat. The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across her silver hair. She offered Jessica a steady nod. "Thank you," she said softly. Jessica's smile tightened. "Just doing my job, ma'am," she replied with forced politeness. Then she swept away, clicking her heels down the aisle. Nana sat back, steadying her breath. Her heart hummed with the familiar ache of being underestimated. Across her lap, the parchment-wrapped pies felt heavy, not because of their sweetness, but because of what they represented. Care, connection, humanity. She glanced out the window as the engines rumbled to life, feeling the plane inch forward. Her thoughts drifted to Flight Core Harmony, the global ethics network she helped found 15 years ago. She'd fought for passenger dignity clauses, for mandatory kindness training, for transparent complaint records. And now, in this self-contained world of professional luxury, she'd just been shamed for carrying a simple treat. A soft chime echoed. Seatbelts required. Passengers clicked belts into place, the gentle snap reverberating through the cabin. Nana's hand hovered over her belt buckle. She drew in a quiet breath and secured it, deliberately clicking it closed. The sound echoed in her mind, restraint and resolve. Up ahead, Jessica knelt before a first-class passenger. Laughter lilting, she refilled a champagne flute. Nana watched the ease of her service, polished, practiced, unyielding. And she saw something deeper in that laugh. Dismissal. A belief that she, Nana Ellis, was beneath notice. Nana closed her eyes briefly. She did not react, but inside, a quiet fire lit. She was here by choice. She'd fly these routes sometimes to test the very standards she championed. Every flight was an opportunity, a chance to see policies in practice, to gather real stories of kindness or cruelty. A young flight attendant hovered near Nana's row. Jonas, his name tag read, uncertainty in his brown eyes. He glanced at Jessica, then at Nana. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Can I get you anything, ma'am?" he asked, voice low. Nana opened her eyes and met his gaze. "A glass of water, please," she said, offering a genuine smile. He nodded, relief flooding his face, and hurried away. The cabin lights dimmed for takeoff. Nana leaned back, letting the hum of the engines vibrate through her spine. In a discreet motion, she slid her phone from her tote and opened the Flight Core Harmony app. The icon pulsed softly, a reminder of the network's global reach. 63 airports, 287 airlines, billions in ESG funding at stake. She tapped through to the ethics flagging interface and selected Severe Ethics Violation, Clause 14. The label glowed red. She entered a brief note. Lead attendant laughed at passenger for bringing homemade pies. Demeanor dismissive, violating dignity and respect protocol. She paused a heartbeat, then pressed Activate. A soft confirmation bubbled up. Flag submitted. Response protocol initiated. Nana slipped the phone back into her tote and folded her hands in her lap. The act was silent, invisible to everyone around her, but far from powerless. In the cockpit, Marcus Sheridan, the flight supervisor, heard the chime of an incoming ethics alert. He frowned, eyes narrowing at the console. "Override protocol?" he muttered. He tapped the screen. "Comply." 37 minutes into the flight, A terse message scrolled across every crew console. Emergency. Ethics override. All flights in Aero Nordic Jet Alliance to initiate unscheduled descent and seatbelt on protocol. Ground operations to review conduct. 47 flights affected. Panic rippled through crew channels. Cabin lights brightened. Flight attendants shot worried looks at one another. Jessica's polished smile faltered as she read her screen. Back in her seat, Nana exhaled. She watched Jessica's stride falter as the announcement came over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the unexpected announcement. In the interest of safety and service standards, we ask that you remain seated until further notice. Thank you for your patience. Gasps and murmurs trickled through the cabin. Jonas shot Nana a thumbs up before turning to help a passenger buckle in again. Nina's expression remained serene as she gazed out at the endless sky. The rest of the flight was tense. Jessica reappeared at Nana's row, tablet in hand, face pale. Nana looked up, offering a courteous nod. Jessica swallowed hard. I'm so sorry, she stammered. That was unprofessional. Nana inclined her head. Thank you, she said softly. But I trust you understand why now. Jessica nodded, shoulders shaking. She turned and hurried away, blinking as though afraid to meet anyone's gaze. When the aircraft touched down, emergency vehicles flanked the runway. Security officers boarded immediately. Jessica was summoned to the galley for a private meeting with Marcus Sheridan. The cabin door swung open, and she walked off the plane in stunned silence. Passengers disembarked to news crews capturing headlines already broadcasting 47 flights grounded after ethics breach, Aero Nordic lead attendant suspended. Nana stood, retrieved her tote, and stepped onto the jet bridge. Reporters craned their necks, but she walked calmly, offering no comments. She paused at the terminal exit and turned once, eyes sweeping the cabin behind her. She allowed herself a faint smile. Justice had been served, not with fanfare, but with a single, decisive action. The power of true authority lay in its subtlety. As she exited into the Chicago evening, Nana felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This flight would be her case study tomorrow, a real-world example in her presentation on the new passenger empathy protocol, to be rolled out next quarter across all 287 partner airlines. She lifted her tote, the pecan pies still intact. Tomorrow, she would share their story, how a simple act of kindness, or the lack of it, could change the course of an entire industry. For now, she stepped into a waiting car, the city lights glittering like distant stars. Her phone buzzed with notifications, news alerts, ethics committee emails, journalists requesting interviews. She tapped a quick reply to one. Yes, I'm available for comment at 9 a.m. Thank you. The engine purred to life. Nana settled back, looking out at the skyline. In the quiet after the storm, she felt a deep calm. The lesson was clear. Respect is not an extra. It's the foundation on which every journey must begin. The soft glow of the cabin lights deepened as the Aero Nordic flight leveled off, cruising high above the patchwork fields of Iowa. Outside, the sky was a canvas of fading gold and lavender. Inside, business class passengers relaxed into plush seats, adjusting headrests and tucking blankets around their shoulders. For most, this stretch of the journey was a quiet interlude between takeoff thrill and landing anticipation, a chance to sip a glass of wine, catch up on email, or simply daydream above the clouds. Nana Ellis sat by the window, her gaze drifting from the horizon to the aisle. She cradled a small paper cup of water in both hands, sending a grateful thought toward Jonas, the junior flight attendant who'd fetched it moments ago. Every sip was cool and refreshing, an oasis amid a sea of polished indifference. Yet despite this small kindness, Nana could still feel the lingering chill of Jessica Alden's earlier disdain, like an invisible draft slipping through the gap between first-class luxury and quiet dignity. Up ahead, Jessica glided through the cabin with choreographed precision. Her movements were smooth, economical, ever the picture of professionalism. She paused to serve a silver tray of smoked salmon canapes to a well-dressed executive in seat 2C, smiling warmly as if she had all the time in the world. Then she turned, hair buns swiveling, and approached a couple draped in cashmere scarves. Her voice was confident, melodic. "May I offer you anything else? Another glass of Bordeaux, perhaps?" Laughter and nods followed. The couple exchanged thrilled glances, privileged members of a world where service like this was expected, even demanded. Jessica refilled their glasses, the liquid swirling like red silks in crystal, and asked after their comfort. Her every word poured with sincerity, a performance honed by countless flights, countless first-class passengers to pamper. And yet, just a few rows back, Nana felt as though she were watching a play she did not quite belong in. She shifted in her seat, smoothing the wrinkles in her wool cardigan. Her linen blouse and simple pearl earrings spoke of quiet taste rather than overt opulence. She might have been mistaken for any elderly traveler, someone to be helped with luggage, offered a blanket, maybe even fussed over for her age. Instead, she'd been met with condescension. Nana closed her eyes briefly, letting the ambient cabin noise, muted conversations, seatbelt chimes, the low whir of air vents, wash over her. She inhaled deeply, then exhaled. She'd practiced this kind of calm many times before, in boardrooms and conferences where her authority was questioned, but doubt never took root. Nana carried an unshakable belief that respect was earned by character, not by uniform or title. The intercom clicked, and the captain's voice spoke over gentle static. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising at 36,000 feet. The outside air temperature is minus 40 degrees. Please enjoy our complimentary service. We anticipate smooth skies across the Atlantic." A polite round of applause greeted his words. Jessica, standing nearby, smiled and dipped her head once, as if accepting personal praise. Then she turned back to her duties, humming softly. Nana looked down at her tray table, where the untouched pecan pies rested, tiny parcels of warmth and home. She fingered the parchment wrap, remembering the early morning in her Chicago kitchen, the nutty aroma filling the air as she poured her care into each crust. The pies were meant as tokens of fellowship, a quiet reminder that behind every passenger was a human story. Today, though, they'd been perceived as a nuisance. She pushed one pie gently with her fingertip, watching it shift. Her stomach tightened at the thought. So many passengers would never understand the effort behind that simple gesture. She would have been happy simply to share a slice with a fellow traveler, an act of kindness she once believed would transcend social barriers. But here, social barriers had been sharply reinforced. Just then, Jonas appeared, balancing a small tray. His eyes darted nervously between Nana and Jessica, as though he were standing at the edge of a moral precipice. "Excuse me, Ms. Ellis," he said quietly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I'm about to offer you some crackers. Would you prefer those?" Nana looked up, meeting his gaze. His brows were drawn together in an expression of regret, the kind of regret that came from knowing the right thing yet feeling powerless to act. She smiled at him, a small but genuine thanks. "That would be lovely, thank you," she replied softly. Jonas exhaled, relief evident in the way his shoulders relaxed. He turned and whispered to a food cart, gathering a handful of artisanal crackers and a small dish of brie cheese. He set the tray on Nana's folding table with a polite nod before hesitating, his final glance carrying both apology and encouragement. Nana took a cracker, topping it with brie, and tasted. The creamy richness spread across her tongue, a small comfort stolen from the cabin's hierarchy. She caught Jonas watching. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and Nana nodded appreciatively, acknowledging his quiet courage. Meanwhile, farther forward, Jessica had moved on to refill another passenger's glass. The hum of polite conversation rose in her wake, as if her presence alone sustained the cabin's facade of exclusivity. A man near the front leaned over to his wife and whispered with a smirk, "She's good. Must be seeing our business class ticket." They chuckled softly, oblivious to the divide their wealth created. Nana felt a familiar pang, not of anger, but of resolve. She lived for moments like this, when a simple test of character revealed the truth of others. She'd come aboard today not merely as a traveler, but as a steward of dignity, an unseen arbiter of behavior. Every policy she wrote, every clause she championed, was founded on the belief that respect was universal. And now, in this cabin, a single flight attendant's dismissive laugh had become a crucible for that belief. She closed her eyes and reached inside her cardigan pocket, feeling the smooth glass surface of her phone. The Flight Core Harmony app lay just beneath her fingertips, pulsing with silent authority. She hadn't used it, yet, but she felt its power hum through her veins. It was there to ensure that every act of kindness, or every lapse in empathy, would not go unnoticed, whether in Chicago or Amsterdam, in business class or coach. Outside the window, the sun slipped below the horizon, and the sky turned deep indigo. The cabin lights shifted to a softer glow, signaling that dinner service would soon begin. Nana folded her hands in her lap, steadying her thoughts. She allowed herself one last quiet moment, feeling the plush seat beneath her and the gentle rise and fall of the plane's motion. When she finally opened the app's interface and selected the minor ethics flag category, her choice was deliberate. Compassion first, correction soon. As she tapped submit, a soft chime confirmed her report. The screen blinked. Flag recorded, pending review. She closed the app and slipped the phone back into her pocket. A hush fell over the cabin as Jessica began distributing meal menus. The lead flight attendant paused, her gaze sweeping the cabin before resting on Nana. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, one pair steady and resolute, the other sharp with practiced confidence. Then Jessica turned away, mask of professionalism perfectly restored. Nana leaned back, a subtle smile playing on her lips. The test had been set, the first move made. Tomorrow, when the ethics committee reviewed the report, they would see more than a tray of crackers or a simple request for water. They would see a moment that mattered, an instance of power misused and a countermeasure quietly deployed. Her heart felt light. The cabin lights dimmed further, and a soft lullaby of engine hum carried her into reflective silence. Whether across oceans or corporate boardrooms, respect would always find its champion. And Nana Ellis, co-founder of Flight Core Harmony, was just getting started. The soft hum of the cabin settled into a low murmur as dinner service began. Overhead bins clicked shut, and the glow of reading lights cast golden pools across plush seats. Nana Ellis sat perfectly still, the gentle rhythm of the plane's engines a steady companion to her thoughts. Before her rested the small batch of pecan pies she'd baked that morning, neatly wrapped in parchment, each crust lightly scored in a swirl pattern. They were meant as a simple gesture of kindness, something to break the ice if fellow passengers seemed uneasy. Now they felt like a flashing neon sign marking her as other. Jessica Alden reappeared at Nana's row, pushing a gleaming trolley stacked with desserts behind her. The aroma of fresh fruit tarts and chocolate mousse drifted through the air, but Jessica paused mid-aisle, her eyes catching sight of Nana's pies. A slow smile spread across her face, one part practiced warmth, two parts condescension. "That's very rustic," Jessica said, picking up a pie and tapping its crust with a polished fingernail. She let the words hang, then turned it so the rippled swirl faced Nana like an unwanted spotlight. A ripple of laughter ran through a few nearby seats. A businessman in a pressed gray suit smirked. A fashion editor teetering in stilettos glanced over her magazine with raised brow. Even some of the more distracted passengers paused, leaning forward to get a better look at the homemade treat. Nana's heart fluttered, a quiet hurt, not unlike the sting of a mildly cruel remark overheard far too many times in her life. She inhaled slowly through her nose, counting to 3. She could feel her cheeks warming, but she kept her chin high and her expression neutral. The pact she'd made with herself years ago was to never give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her wounded. But inside, the familiar ache of invisibility gnawed at her. She thought of all the times she'd walked into boardrooms as co-founder of Flight Corps Harmony, met with polite smiles, backslaps, and then a rush to eye-roll her out of earshot. She reminded herself, dignity is strength. Respect is earned by character, not by shine or status. Jessica let the pie rest momentarily on the trolley before tucking it back among the artful desserts. She tapped her chin thoughtfully, then moved on to serve a couple sipping champagne 2 rows ahead, her smile pitching right back to full professional warmth as she offered them fresh strawberries. Nana let her breathing return to normal. She watched the first-class couple's delighted expressions, their eyes lit by the flicker of candlelight cabin lights. Their world was one of seamless service. Hers included moments like this, the small public humiliation that taught her patience and steel. A hush fell for a moment as Jessica disappeared behind the galley curtain, and Nana glanced at the other passengers again. Jonas, the junior flight attendant, hovered near the drink cart at the front of the cabin, his brow furrowed in concern. He was young, perhaps mid-20s, with a kind face that still carried traces of idealism. She caught his eye and offered a brief, appreciative nod. He hesitated, hands clenched around the edge of the cart, longing to step in but held back by the unspoken rules of airline hierarchy. Across the aisle, a mother whispered to her daughter, "Let's just mind our own business, sweetheart." The little girl looked wide-eyed at the trolley, then at Nana, then back at her mother. The hush of compliance settled over nearby seats, murmured discomfort without action, sympathetic looks that never found words. Nana allowed the subtle warmth of solidarity to wash over her. Even if no one spoke up, the shift in energy was palpable. People rarely stayed silent when they felt wronged, unless fear or social awkwardness held them back. She understood. Years ago, she'd stood silent herself, watching colleagues dismiss someone else's idea. It felt safer, easier to blend in. She reached into her tote and retrieved one of the pies, removing the parchment wrap with deliberate care. She placed it gently on her tray table, the swirl of crust catching the cabin light like a fingerprint. With the precision of a committee chair reading minutes, she slid the pie toward her and broke off a small piece, savoring the sweet, nutty flavor. Every bite was a reminder that she was more than what others assumed. Outside, the plane banked slightly, sending a soft groan through the fuselage. Nana sipped her water, then set the cup down. The ambient noise, murmurs, the drone of airflow, clinking glass, felt like the world itself leaning in to watch what would come next. "If I may," came a tentative voice. Jonas stepped toward her row, cradling a folded blanket. "It's getting a bit chilly back here. Would you like this?" Nana offered him a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Jonas, that's very thoughtful." He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding and handed her the blanket. She draped it over her shoulders, the soft wool a small comfort. The gesture spoke volumes more than any apology. Around them, the cabin's atmosphere remained tense but respectful now. Jessica's brief display of disdain had passed, but its echo lingered in the charged air. Nana could almost feel the outlines of each passenger's internal question. Why? Her mind drifted as she tucked the blanket around her arms. She thought of the ethics code she'd drafted, the one requiring each airline to track passenger treatment incidents, compile data, and publish quarterly reports. Some had scoffed at mandatory dignity metrics as too idealistic, too burdensome. Yet here she sat, proof that small acts, one laugh, one shared blanket, one online flag, had the power to shift the narrative. She watched as Jonas retreated, giving her the space to process. She cradled the blanket like a shield, a quiet affirmation that comfort came from small acts of humanity. She thought of the network she'd built. Flight Corps Harmony connected 63 airports, monitored billions in ESG funding, and enforced protocols ensuring that no passenger could be dismissed for anything other than their own wrongdoing. Soon, they'd roll out the passenger empathy protocol, teaching crews to serve respect first, service second, a lesson she seemed to be teaching in person tonight. A muffled chuckle drew her attention forward where Jessica was once again serving champagne. The flight attendant's back was turned, but the tilt of her shoulders spoke of success. She'd gotten the reaction she wanted, and she was basking in it. But in that moment, a small red circle blinked on a screen tucked behind the galley door. An incoming ethics alert labeled Minor Ethics Violation, Dignity Protocol. The system was already at work. Nana sat motionless as the alert cycled through, her breathing calm. She thought of Chapter 3's core truth. Exterior appearances do not define worth. The aisles of polished seats and clinking glasses might radiate luxury, but dignity was not bundled in champagne flutes. It resided in every act of consideration. The cabin lights dimmed again, signaling a lull before the next service wave. Passengers adjusted their seats, some leaning back in comfort, others glancing at the screens. A journalist in seat 4D tapped away on her laptop, eyebrows knitting as she read an update on the network's website. Ethics flag triggered on flight AN-112, possible dignity breach by lead attendant. Nana met the journalist's eye across the aisle and offered a polite nod. The woman's fingers froze over the keyboard, curiosity shining through her professional focus. The hum of anticipation swelled. In a few short minutes, flight operations in Chicago would receive the same alert. The ripple of Jessica's mockery had become a wave of accountability. Quiet, efficient, unstoppable. Nana closed her eyes briefly, savoring the moment. She could almost taste the justice in the air. Not punitive or vindictive, but corrective and fair. As a pioneer in the ethics monitoring field, she'd argued that true change required subtle but enforceable measures. Tonight proved her theory. She opened her eyes and adjusted her blanket, the swirl of the pie crust at her side, the glow of the alert behind the galley. The world above the clouds felt intimate and charged, every person a story, every act a statement. Nana Ellis exhaled softly. She was ready for Chapter 4, where the silent power she wielded would make itself known. For now, she would merely remain calm, dignified, and true to her belief. Exterior doesn't define worth, but actions reveal true character. The cabin settles into a hush as the second meal service winds down. Business class trays are cleared, linen napkins folded, and a low glow of reading lights lingers. Beyond the window, the sky has darkened to a deep navy, and the first stars are beginning to wink into existence. In this dim sanctuary of commerce and quiet prestige, Nana Ellis's presence is almost ghostly, small, poised, and observant. She cups her hands around a cooling glass of water, watching Jonas, a young flight attendant, move down the aisle with the efficiency of well-trained habit. He glides past her row, pausing briefly to offer a reassuring smile, but he does not stop. His eyes flick toward Nana and then away, as though he senses something about to happen but isn't quite certain what. Nana sets the glass down, her fingers lingering on the smooth rim. She exhales, a soft, measured breath that seems to draw the cabin's ambient stillness into her lungs. Then, with the precision of a veteran executive, she reaches into her cardigan pocket and retrieves her smartphone. The Flight Core Harmony app icon is small and unobtrusive, a globe encircled by 2 rings of light. To the uninitiated, it might seem like any other travel or concierge application. But to Nana, co-founder and global coordinator of the network, it is the definitive instrument of airline ethics enforcement. Tonight, it will do more than record a minor complaint. It will trigger a transformative protocol. She taps the icon, and a soft pulse of light animates the globe. A login screen fades in. Nana's thumb hovers over the fingerprint scanner, and a gentle chime confirms her identity. The home screen displays a map of 63 international airports, each marked by a small dot. Along the top, a narrow banner reads, Flight Core Harmony, Active Protocols, 287 Airlines, Global Coverage. Nana's eyes track the banner for a moment, then move down to the menu. She selects Incident Reporting, where a list of recent minor flags appears. There's a cluster of low-level reports, seatbelt delays, dietary requests mishandled, a puckish note about dimmed reading lights. She scrolls past them, each entry timestamped and tagged by code. Then she reaches today's entry for flight AN 112, her own flight. Her finger taps that entry. A detail view opens. Lead attendant behavior, mocking gesture, refusing service, dismissive tone. A thumbnail image, a still taken from the cabin's discreet CCTV, shows Jessica Alden leaning over a first-class passenger, her hand raised and her lips curved in that familiar, mocking half-smile. Nana scrolls further to Violation Severity, Suggested Category, Minor. Minor would mean a note in the file, perhaps a letter of reprimand. But this is not minor. Not when a passenger's dignity has been publicly ridiculed. She taps Change Severity, and a drop-down menu expands. Minor, moderate. Severe, Clause 14. She selects Severe, Clause 14, and a confirmation dialog appears. Severe ethics flag, discriminatory behavior, immediate global compliance review and alliance-wide response. Proceed? Nana's gaze flicks out the window. The stars shimmer like distant approvals. She returns her focus to the device and taps Proceed. The globe icon pulses red for a moment, then stabilizes. A quiet notification drifts up the screen. Flag activated. Dispatching override protocol to Aero Nordic and Jet Alliance. Estimated impact, 47 flights. ESG fund freeze initiated. Nana locks the phone and tucks it back into her cardigan. She presses her fingers together, a brief gesture of closure. The soft clink of her bracelet against her wrist sounds louder than usual. In the cockpit, a faint red light flashes on the flight operations console. Marcus Sheridan swivels his chair, brow furrowing as he reads the text rolling across the screen. Emergency ethics override. All Aero Nordic and Jet Alliance flights initiate unscheduled compliance descent. Ground review to commence upon landing. He exhales sharply. Override protocol? On a level 4 ethics flag? He mutters to himself. Then key clicks a response on his terminal. Confirmed. Notify cabin crew. Comply immediately. Beside him, co-pilot Kate Moreno glances up. Isn't that unprecedented? She asks, voice taut with disbelief. The console has already sent automatic signals to ground control in Chicago, London, and Frankfurt. Marcus nods. Flight core harmony doesn't trigger casually. Someone must have used top-level authority. He taps a microphone button. Cabin crew, this is flight operations. Please prepare for mandatory compliance descent and stand by for further instructions. Back in the cabin, light flickers on the service trolley as Jonas reads a message on his handheld tablet. His jaw tightens, and he looks toward the galley, where Jessica Alden has just finished setting down a tray. The flight attendant's fingers freeze on a champagne bottle cork, her back to the cart. Jonas clears his throat. Jessica, he says quietly, we've got an ethics override. We need to inform the passengers. Please, do it now. Jessica whirls around, eyes wide. Her carefully maintained composure cracks. What? Why? She demands, her voice pitching with panic. Jonas's expression is apologetic but firm. I don't know the full details, but we have to comply. Nana shifts in her seat, her eyes drifting casually toward the center aisle. She doesn't need to see Jessica's reaction. She knows it will be one of shock, perhaps anger. But Nana feels only calm certainty. The power she wields isn't showy or vengeful. It's deliberate justice, administered in the quiet moments where true integrity is tested. A few rows ahead, a passenger in 3A frowns at the sudden dimming of cabin lights. Another in 4C taps on her tablet, scanning the news alert that has already begun circulating through the onboard Wi-Fi. Breaking, 47 flights grounded in 6 hours following ethics breach. Aero Nordic faces global review. Whispers ripple through the cabin. Jonas steps forward to address them. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the interruption. For your safety and in accordance with airline ethics regulations, We will be adjusting our altitude and preparing an unscheduled compliance review. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. Nana watches the subtly rising tide of surprise and discomfort. Some passengers exchange incredulous glances. Others simply settle back, trusting that the network they rely on will ensure fairness. She leans forward and retrieves her glass of water again, sipping gently. She lets her gaze wander to Jonas, offering him a small, grateful nod. He returns it, a flicker of relief passing across his features. The aircraft begins its gentle descent. Its angle shifts by a few degrees as the pilots comply with the new directive. Jessica stands at the front of the cabin, pale and silent, hands clasped in front of her apron. The remnants of her practiced cheer are gone, replaced by a hollow anxiety. Nana's heart is steady. She closes her eyes briefly, savoring the hush that follows her action. This is the culmination of everything she's built, a framework that does not tolerate cruelty or neglect, no matter how small. It's a reminder that true authority doesn't need to roar, it simply acts. As the plane glides toward a lower altitude, the cabin lights brighten fractionally, signaling that compliance is underway. The hum of the galley equipment intensifies. Passengers rustle, shifting in their seats, stories waiting to be told once the plane returns to normal service. And somewhere in the servers that power flight core harmony, the data point of Jessica's laughter, the echo of rustic and picnic baskets, is logged forever, a permanent record in a system designed to protect every traveler's dignity. Nana Ellis leans back, fingers interlaced over her pie tote. The world may see her as an elderly woman with homemade desserts, but in moments like these, they see the power of quiet authority unleashed. The plane's descent is smooth yet profound, just like the change she set in motion. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft twilight as the plane settled into its descent pattern. Business class conversation fell to a hush, punctuated only by the gentle hum of the engines and the subtle click of seatbelt buckles. Nana Ellis sat perfectly still in seat 7B, the small paper-wrapped pecan pies resting at her feet like silent witnesses. A curious child in the next row peered at them, wide-eyed. Nana reached out, unwrapped one pie, and broke it in half. "Would you like a bite?" she offered, lifting the crusted halves toward the girl. The child's eyes sparkled with delight, a simple moment of connection far removed from the earlier tension. As the girl nibbled, Nana let her gaze drift upward, scanning the cabin one more time. Jessica Alden stood at the front, shoulders tense, briefing a first-class patron on new menu options. Jonas hovered nearby, clearly watching events unfold. No one suspected that Nana's quiet kindness would be the precursor to a disruption far greater than a shared dessert. Reaching into her cardigan pocket, Nana withdrew her phone and tapped the Flight Core Harmony icon. The globe-encircled logo pulsed gently, inviting her into the secure realm of her life's work. A network she'd helped build to enforce respect and empathy across 142 international airports. She logged in with a touch of her fingerprint. The main screen displayed real-time ethics alerts, minor flags for misplaced blankets, moderate flags for unattended service calls, and a series of green check marks for flights in full compliance. Nana tapped My Current Flight, Flight AN1112 Chicago to Amsterdam. The screen showed her recent selection, Severe Ethics Violation, Clause 14. A progress bar glowed under Dispatch Status, ticking upward from 0%. She watched as it moved to 25%, then 50%. A tiny vibration on her wrist quieted her inner pulse. Above, the soft chime of the galley signaled that cabin crew needed to buckle in. Jessica's voice came over the intercom, strained and urgent. "Flight attendants, please prepare for unscheduled compliance review. Place carts in stowage and secure cabin." Passengers exchanged puzzled glances. Jonas stepped forward, checking seatbelt signs and scanning rows with a crisp professionalism that belied his earlier hesitation. Nana tapped View Dispatch Details. A modal window expanded. Override protocol initiated. Affected, 47 flights ground response teams deploying in Chicago, London, Frankfurt. ESG fund freeze, 900. She let her thumb hover over the close button, appreciating the clarity of those numbers. 47 flights, $910 million. Real consequences for a single lapse in dignity. The progress bar hit 100%. A confirmation banner scrolled across. Severe ethics flag confirmed. Alliance-wide compliance override active. FAA and IATA notified. She tucked the phone away. In that instant, the cabin felt heavier, charged with anticipation. Jonas secured the final curtain in the galley and leaned in toward Jessica. "Ma'am, we have confirmation," he said softly, voice low. "We're ground speeding to compliance descent. Corporate has been notified." Jessica's face paled. For a moment, she stood frozen, mouth slightly agape, her polished composure cracking for the first time. Then she squared her shoulders and met Nana's eye briefly, as if seeking forgiveness. Nana offered nothing but a calm nod. In the cockpit, Marcus Sheridan tapped his headset. "Chicago Control, this is AN-112. Initiating unscheduled descent for compliance review. ETA to waypoint 3,500 feet in 3 minutes. The captain's voice was steady, businesslike. Back in business class, the lights brightened slightly, and the seatbelt signs glowed. A ripple of tension spread. Passengers braced themselves, some gripping armrests, others leaning forward as if drawn into a drama they didn't fully understand. Jonas moved down the aisle, checking belts and offering water. When he reached Nana, he paused. "Thank you," he murmured, eyes honest. Nana nodded once, offering him a faint, knowing smile. The child who'd eaten the pie looked up, curious. Nana patted her hand. "Sometimes the smallest acts set the biggest changes in motion," she whispered. As the plane eased toward its new altitude, the cabin felt united by an unspoken purpose. Respect and safety were paramount, trumping speed or convenience. Outside the window, the night sky stretched infinite and silent, bearing witness to a subtle revolution sparked by a single, deliberate action. In her lap, Nana folded her hands over her tote. The pecan pies had done their part, softening hearts so the real work could begin. And somewhere within Flight Core Harmony's global servers, a record had been made. A universal declaration that dignity would be protected, no matter the altitude or the audience. News alerts flashed on screens in 3 time zones: Chicago, London, and Frankfurt. In Aero Nordic's Global Operations Center outside O'Hare, rows of flight planning consoles chimed in unison. Technicians tapped controls, their eyes widening as the system populated with 47 active flights flagged for unscheduled compliance descent. Meanwhile, thousands of feet above the Atlantic, pilots in the Alliance scrambled through checklists. Cockpits filled with the measured hum of intercoms. On Flight AN-247 en route from New York to Copenhagen, Captain Ruiz announced over the PA, "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a global ethics override, we'll be descending to 5,000 feet for an unscheduled compliance review. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." A chorus of surprised murmurs rose from the cabin. Stewardesses exchanged puzzled looks. In seat 11C, a banker checked his screen. An update from his firm. 910 MM ESG Holdings frozen pending review. He frowned, tapping constant alerts on his phone. Back at Aero Nordic headquarters, CEO Douglas Kramer pounded his fist on a glass desk. Behind him, a wall of live feed monitors scrolled news tickers. Ethics breach triggers alliance-wide grounding. ESG freeze hits $910 million. FAA and IATA convene emergency summit. His board members leaned forward, faces drained of color. "Explain this," Kramer demanded, voice taut. He pressed a handheld mic. "Operations Center, report." A calm but urgent voice crackled back. "Sir, at 2017 GMT, Flight Core Harmony triggered Clause 14 for Flight AN-112. Protocol automatically dispatched to all Aero Nordic and Jet Alliance flights, 47 in total. Simultaneously, participating ESG funds were suspended per global compliance guidelines. FAA and IATA have been notified." The room fell silent. CFO Laura Chen's jaw trembled. She tapped her tablet. $910 million. Frozen within minutes. Investors are canceling trades as we speak. A murmur grew among the directors. Kramer ran a hand through his hair. This cannot stand, he said through clenched teeth. Across the ocean, in London, Jet Alliance's emergency committee gathered in mirror-bright conference suites. Late-night city lights glowed beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Chairman Viktor Petrov looked at the global dashboard. Every Alliance flight red-flagged. He felt his chest tighten. "This is unprecedented," he whispered, glancing at his executive team. "We risk multi-billion-dollar losses if this drags on." They scrambled through options. Issue a public apology, lobby Flight Corps harmony, petition the FAA for a stay. Every path felt like damage control, a race to salvage reputation. Meanwhile, in Seat 7B of Flight AN-112, Nana Ellis closed her eyes and inhaled the hum of engines. She felt a quiet thrill, a soft smile curving her lips. Her hand squeezed the edge of her tote. In boardrooms and drafts, she'd envisioned this moment. Policy made real, not in theory, but in practice. She recalled the countless hours spent negotiating ethics first clauses, translating idealism into enforceable code. Her phone lay tucked away, but she already knew the numbers. 47 flights, 910 AM, 3 regulators mobilized overnight. She allowed herself a single exhale of satisfaction. Never loud, never boastful, but profoundly sure. Below deck, cabin crew braced themselves. Jonas locked the galley, glancing at Jessica Alden standing rigidly at the front of the cabin. The lead attendant's perfectly coiffed bun quivered with tension. For the first time this flight, Jessica's mask of confidence slipped. Her gaze met Nana's for a heartbeat, a glance of recognition, remorse, and dread. Jonas spoke over the cabin intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we understand this is unusual. Please remain calm. Safety and service will resume as soon as compliance reviews are complete." Passengers shifted uneasily in their seats, but many looked toward Nana with something like awe. In this moment, she was no longer just a quiet traveler. She represented a higher standard, a code that demanded respect above all else. At 5,000 feet, the descent leveled off. Flight attendants moved methodically, securing carts and checking belts. The cabin felt charged, unified by an unspoken lesson. Dignity could not be negotiated or ignored. In control rooms and boardrooms, executives scrambled for damage control. In the sky above, 47 flights hovered in suspended compliance. And in her seat, Nana Ellis sat serene, embodying the principles she had spent her life building. True power is exercised quietly, but its impact can echo across continents. This was the moment the industry would remember, not for the panic, but for the message. Respect isn't optional. It's a mandate. And when it's enforced, the world listens. In a sleek, glass-walled boardroom overlooking Chicago's skyline, Alexander Sinclair tapped out a brief but damning message on his encrypted phone. Nana Ellis, co-author of the original Ellis Protocol, just flagged AN-112 for Clause 14. Immediate review required. He hit send, then leaned back in his leather chair. Behind him, 3 large monitors displayed live feeds of airlines in crisis mode. Blinking red dots marking 47 grounded flights, scrolling headlines about a $910 million ESG freeze, and real-time ethics alerts flooding corporate dashboards. Across town at Aero Nordics Flight Operations Center, the alert buzzed in on multiple screens. Marcus Sheridan, flight supervisor, caught sight of the incoming notification. Stakeholder alert, Ellis Protocol originator identified. His heart skipped. He knew exactly who Nana Ellis was and what her flag meant. He swapped his headset to the crew channel and cleared his throat. "Cabin crew, this is Marcus Sheridan. Lead attendant Jessica Alden, please report to the galley immediately. Repeat, Jessica Alden, to the galley." His voice stayed calm, but the words carried the weight of corporate scrutiny. In the galley, Jessica Alden was busy rearranging service carts, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The soft hum of the air vents was cut by the hiss of the call. She glanced at her wearable tablet. "Flight operations, Eva Sheridan requests your presence in the galley. Urgent." "On my way," she mouthed, forcing a professional smile as she turned toward the aisle. Her polished heels clicked down the narrow walkway. Passengers watched, curiosity flickering in their eyes. Jessica's throat felt suddenly dry, as though someone had shaved the usual confidence right off her voice. She arrived at the galley door just as Jonas hovered nearby, giving her a sympathetic nod. Jessica took a deep breath and stepped inside. Marcus stood at the center of the compact space, his expression a practiced mask of neutrality. Behind him, the digital display on the bulkhead showed the stakeholder alert. Ellis Protocol Originator detected, flashing in red. "Ma'am," Marcus began, voice firm but not unkind. "We've received direct notification from Mr. Sinclair. He's one of our largest stakeholders. He confirms Dr. Nana Ellis is not just any passenger. She's co-author of the Ellis Protocol." He paused, watching Jessica's eyes widen. "You are to explain why she was denied basic courtesy earlier." Jessica's mouth went dry. The neatly pressed collar of her uniform suddenly felt tight. I'm not sure I understand." Her voice quavered. Marcus held up a tablet showing the time-stamped CCTV stills. Jessica laughing at Nana's homemade pie, snapping closed the overhead bin, dismissing a simple request for water. The images were unassailable. Passengers beyond the galley wall pressed against the partition, straining to see. "In your own words," Marcus prompted, "explain this behavior." Jessica's gaze flicked to the tablet, then back to Marcus. Her mind raced. She'd been certain that mocking the pie and ignoring Nana would go unnoticed, a harmless joke among service pros. But there it was, in cold, clear imagery. I made a mistake," she stammered. "I assumed she was just another passenger who didn't belong in business class. I thought I was protecting our service standards." Her voice cracked. "I never meant to disrespect her." Marcus nodded once, absorbing her apology but holding the silence. Behind him, a soft chime signaled a new ethics update. "Compliance review underway, all flights," flickered into view. "Your apology needs to be genuine," he said quietly. "And it needs to be delivered where everyone can hear it." He motioned toward the galley doorway. "Explain yourself, Miss Alden. Now." Jessica swallowed, her cheeks burning. She squared her shoulders and stepped into the aisle. The cabin had grown silent. Every passenger's eyes fixed on her. The banker in 2A, the journalist in 4C, the mother clutching her daughter's hand. Even Jonas hovered at the front, waiting. Jessica cleared her throat, voice trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, forcing that practiced cadence back into her tone. "I want to offer my sincerest apology to Ms. Ellis, and to all of you. I behaved unprofessionally and disrespected a valued passenger. I deeply regret my actions." A hush followed, broken by the gentle rustle of reactions. A few nods, a whispered, "Finally," and a lone clap from 2 rows back. Marcus slipped back into the galley, leaving Jessica to finish. "As lead attendant," she pressed on, "I failed to uphold the respect and courtesy we vow to every traveler. I take full responsibility, and I promise to learn from this." She paused, voice catching. "I'm truly sorry." When she returned to the galley, Marcus handed her a company policy briefing document. "Read this. You'll need to sign off on retraining modules and submit a detailed report." His tone was businesslike but not cruel. "You'll be suspended pending further review. We cannot tolerate this behavior." Jessica nodded, tears brimming. "Yes, sir." She nodded again, barely audible, then retreated to the curtain, head bowed. Inside the cabin, the spell of tension broke. Jonas moved to offer blankets and water. Passengers exchanged quiet murmurs of sympathy for Nana and Jonas's bravery. Nana, seated by the window, caught Jessica's eye one last time. There was no anger in her gaze, only a serene acknowledgement of justice delivered. As the galley curtain closed, the cabin lights shifted back to normal, but the lesson remained vivid. Respect is not optional. And when it's denied, the ripples can span an entire sky. The cabin lights brightened to full illumination, dispelling the earlier twilight. A hush settled over the rows as Jessica Alden, lead attendant, stepped back into the aisle. The soft click of her uniform shoes against the carpet sounded unnaturally loud. Passengers straightened in their seats, eyes fixed on the woman who had triggered a global ethics crisis. Jessica paused at row 7, directly beside Nana Ellis's seat. Her shoulders trembled, but she lifted her gaze, meeting Nana's calm, unflinching eyes. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. Jessica began, voice low and wavering. I was wrong. She swallowed, drawing in a shaky breath as dozens of expectant faces turned toward her. I let my pride and assumptions guide my actions, and I hurt a passenger who deserved respect, just like any of you do. Her words were simple, but carried the weight of genuine contrition. A soft murmur rippled through the cabin. The banker in seat 2A nodded curtly. A mother tucked her daughter's hair behind her ear, eyes sympathetic. Jonas watched from the front, his youthful face alight with relief that the apology was finally public. Jessica continued, voice growing steadier. Mrs. Ellis, I'm deeply sorry for mocking your homemade pies, for dismissing your request, and for making you feel unwelcome. I failed to honor the core values I swore by when I joined this airline. She gestured toward her name badge. My name is Jessica Alden, and I accept full responsibility for my conduct. Nana Ellis offered a small, dignified nod. Her expression conveyed both forgiveness and the gravity of the lesson imparted. Jessica let her eyes linger on Nana's serene face, drawing strength from the composure she'd witnessed. Then, turning slightly, Jessica faced the rest of the cabin. To every passenger on this flight, she said, her voice now unwavering, I apologize as well. You place your trust in us when you fly, regardless of your age, appearance, or background. I failed you today, and I promise to do better, starting now. A woman in row 5, hands clasped tightly, whispered, Thank you for saying that. The cabin erupted, soft applause first, then a wave of genuine, respectful applause that grew in volume as skeptical looks melted into approval. Jonas moved down the aisle, distributing bottled water and blankets with renewed purpose. When he reached Nana's row, he offered a gentle bow of his head. Nana accepted the gesture with a warm, encouraging smile. Jessica lingered for a moment, eyes glistening. She drew in one final breath and stepped back, mouthing thank you to Nana. Then she turned and walked toward the galley, shoulders squared with the knowledge that she had begun to atone. As the curtain closed behind her, the cabin exhaled collectively. The tension that had hung like a dark cloud lifted, replaced by a tangible sense of closure. Passengers relaxed against their seats. Phones re-emerged from pockets to share the moment on social media. Videos of Jessica's apology already going viral. Jonas paused at the aisle and called softly, Is everyone okay? A chorus of nods answered him. Even the curious child from row 6 gave a confident thumbs up to Nana. Nana settled back, the glow from her small lantern-style reading light illuminating her serene face. She reached down, lifted one of the remaining pecan pies, and offered a piece to the passenger beside her, an unspoken invitation to kindness. Above them, the plane's engines hummed steadily. Cabin staff resumed their duties with humility etched in every movement. The world beyond the windows remained indifferent, but within those walls, respect had been restored. And as the flight pressed on toward Amsterdam, one thing was clear. In that moment of public reckoning, compassion and accountability had reclaimed their rightful place at 36,000 feet. The seatbelt sign flickered on again, and a hush rippled through the cabin. Captain Shaw's calm voice came over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the ethics compliance review initiated by Flight Corps Harmony, we will perform an unscheduled descent before landing. Please remain seated. We'll update you shortly. A soft murmur drifted through business class. Passengers exchanged glances, some perplexed, others quietly approving. In the galley, Jonas took a steadying breath. He gripped the edge of the service cart, gathering courage for what he felt compelled to do. He wheeled the cart toward the front of the cabin and tapped lightly on the side. The chatter subsided.
Excuse me, everyone," Jonas began, voice steady but warm. He met dozens of pairs of eyes, from bankers to executives, journalists to families. "On behalf of the cabin crew, I want to apologize for any distress caused by earlier events. We're committed to serving you with respect. Thank you for your patience." A ripple of polite applause followed. Jonas offered a shy nod, stepping back as soft tension gave way to collective understanding. He had given voice to everyone's relief, and to the lesson this flight had become. Moments later, a middle-aged woman in seat 4D, a marketing executive in a crisp blazer, leaned forward to address Jessica Alden, who stood silently by the galley curtain. The woman's silver hair was pulled back in a neat chignon, and her eyes shone with quiet indignation. "Miss Alden," she said, voice firm but not harsh, "hope your champagne was worth your job." The remark landed like a gentle blow. Passengers tittered in agreement, and Jessica's shoulders slumped. She offered the woman a small, contrite nod. The woman returned it, as if acknowledging both the apology and the accountability that had followed. Elsewhere in the cabin, a journalist tapped out a quick note. Aero-Nordic Ethics Review Forces Descent. Passenger empowerment story unfolds mid-flight. A few keyboards clicked as fellow travelers checked social media. Messages of admiration for Nana Ellis and Jonas blazed across personal feeds. Nana herself remained composed in 7B. She watched the scene, the general apology, the pointed remark, as though witnessing the final act of a play she had directed. She caught Jonas's eye once more and offered him a small, encouraging smile. He grinned back, relieved and validated. Jessica stepped fully into the aisle, taking a breath. She turned to the entire cabin, voice trembling but earnest. "I want to thank you all for holding me accountable today. Your feedback matters. I promise to learn from this and earn back your trust." A murmur of "thank you" and "we appreciate that" came from various rows. The cabin felt unified in that moment, not by luxury or status, but by shared values of dignity and respect. As the plane glided down toward 5,000 feet, flight attendants moved with renewed purpose, checking seatbelts and offering blankets. Jonas stopped by Nana, adjusting the edge of her shawl. "Everything okay back here?" he asked softly. Nana's eyes met his, steady and kind. "More than okay," she replied. "Thank you, Jonas." Below decks, the glow of runway lights emerged in gaps between clouds. The cabin lights brightened just enough for safety. Passengers leaned forward, eyes trained on the windows and also on one another, changed by a flight that had become a lesson in accountability. When the aircraft finally leveled off for its final approach, the intercom clicked once more. "Thank you for your cooperation. We expect to land on schedule. We appreciate your understanding as we uphold the highest ethics standards." Applause broke out again, this time genuine and heartfelt. Cameras flashed discreetly. Smartphones were raised to capture the moment, a flight that refused to let a single voice of contempt go unchecked. Nana folded her hands in her lap. The pecan pies at her feet remained untouched, but their purpose had been fulfilled. In the quiet aftermath of the descent and the apology, she saw something more profound than any dessert could convey. The power of integrity exercised with intention, even at 36,000 feet. The plane's tires kissed the runway moments later. As the applause lingered, Nana allowed herself a soft smile. This flight would be remembered not for turbulence or turbulence of weather, but for the turbulence of conscience, and for the calm that followed when truth was finally unmasked. By the time Flight AN-112 touched down in Amsterdam, the world had already shifted. Social media feeds blazed with the story. Elderly passengers ethics flag grounds 47 flights. $910 MESG freeze triggers emergency summit. Lead attendant suspended after public reckoning. Headlines splashed across screens from Chicago to Tokyo faster than any in-flight Wi-Fi could load. Within hours, The FAA and IATA convened an unscheduled Harmonized Ethics Summit in Montreal, video-linking regulators, airline CEOs, and ethics experts from 6 continents. At the grand circular table, stacked folders bore the title Passenger Empathy Protocol, a new, unified framework drafted by Nana Ellis years ago, but never ratified industry-wide. Now, under pressure from public outcry and investor mandates, it was put to an immediate vote. Airline leaders, some scarlet-faced, others relieved, debated clauses that required mandatory dignity training for all cabin crew, refreshed annually, real-time ethics alerts shared across partner carriers, transparent reporting of passenger complaints published quarterly, third-party review boards empowered to issue binding sanctions. After tense deliberations, a unanimous decision was announced. Passenger Empathy Protocol will be adopted by all 287 participating airlines within 90 days. Cameras clicked. Live streams teemed with analysts declaring it a watershed moment in aviation history. Meanwhile, financial markets reacted. ESG funds, once frozen at $910 million, now locked in tighter compliance guardrails. Investors cheered at the prospect of reduced reputational risk. Aeronautics stock, which had dipped sharply on ethics-flagged news, rebounded as the company pledged swift implementation and public transparency. Across the globe, cabin crew in New Delhi, Sao Paulo, and Sydney signed online acknowledgements. I commit to treat every passenger with respect, regardless of appearance or status. A colleague in London shared a photo of a staff bulletin board reading, "From today onward, ethics first, service second." In Aeronautics headquarters, CEO Douglas Kramer addressed employees via company intranet. This was more than a crisis. It was our wake-up call. The Passenger Empathy Protocol isn't just policy. It's our new promise. In the same building, a framed email from Alexander Sinclair hung on the ethics office wall. To everyone impacted, thank you for answering the call to dignity. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune ran an op-ed titled "How One Pie Changed the Skies," praising Nana Ellis and Flight Corps Harmony as true guardians of passenger rights. A TV talk show invited Jonas to share his perspective, how small acts of kindness can tip the balance in moments of crisis. Nana Ellis watched these developments from her study, walls lined with books on ethics and aviation history, sipping chamomile tea. She allowed herself a modest smile of satisfaction. She wasn't driven by vengeance. Her goal had always been systemic fairness. Now, every flight attendant handbook and crew badge would bear the imprint of her vision. As dusk fell outside her window, Nana drafted a short thank you note to all who'd supported the protocol's ratification. She added a personal line, "May every journey be as safe for the heart as it is for the body." On the cusp of a new era in air travel, the silent revolution she'd ignited soared far beyond one cabin. Respect, it seemed, would now have its rightful altitude. The terminal's arrival hall of Schiphol Airport buzzed with disembarking passengers, camera crews, and airport staff. But amid the bustle, one moment stood out as uniquely tender. Nana Ellis alighted from Flight AN-112 with quiet grace, her tote of pecan pies in hand. As she passed through the jet bridge, she paused, scanning the faces around her until she found Jonas. Jonas stood just inside the gate, still in his uniform, dark eyes bright with anticipation. He'd spent the flight helping Nana with water, blankets, and more importantly, respect. His calm competence had been a guiding light through the crisis in the cabin, and now it was his turn to be recognized. Nana approached him, her steps sure and unhurried. She caught the attention of nearby passengers and crew, like drawing a gentle current that pulled focus to one small corner of the world. "Jonas," she said softly, voice carrying clearly through the hushed terminal. He looked up, startled. "I want you to step forward." He swallowed and moved beside her. The murmurs grew into respectful silence as airport staff and a few waiting journalists turned their cameras toward them. "Throughout this flight," Nana continued, "I witnessed your courage. You offered kindness when it could have gone unnoticed. You spoke up when it mattered. You reminded us all that dignity isn't just a policy, it's an action." She reached into her tote and produced a small certificate embossed with the Flight Corps Harmony seal. The header read, "North America Ethics Compliance Pilot Program." Under that, in elegant script, "Presented to Jonas Mueller for exemplary demonstration of passenger empathy protocol." Jonas's breath caught. He reached out to accept it, fingers trembling just slightly as Nana pressed it into his palm. "You're being named Ethics Compliance Pilot for North America," Nana said, smiling. "I want you to lead our trial program, train your fellow crew members, gather feedback, and ensure every passenger is treated with unwavering respect." A ripple of applause rose among the bystanders, flight attendants, airport staff, and even a few passengers who'd lingered. Jonas looked awed, a flush of pride coloring his cheeks. "Thank you, Ms. Ellis," he managed, voice husky. I won't let you down." Nana shook her head gently. "You already haven't." She clasped his shoulder in a brief, affirming touch. As cameras clicked, Nana turned back to the waiting crowd. "This recognition isn't just about one flight or one person. It's about reminding every crew member, every passenger, that our industry thrives on humanity as much as it does on safety and efficiency. Jonas's example shows us the way forward." The applause swelled, genuine and warm. Jonas straightened, certificate held to his chest like a shield of honor. Around them, colleagues whispered congratulations and tapped his shoulder. Even Jessica Alden paused, offering him a respectful nod, an acknowledgement of the new standard he represented. Nana inclined her head once more, then stepped aside, signaling the end of the moment. Jonas turned to her, eyes shining. "Ready?" she asked. "Absolutely," he replied, confidence firming his tone. Together they walked through the gate into the airport hall, one the architect of systemic change, the other its bright ambassador. The hubbub of the terminal resumed around them, but for Jonas, the world had shifted. Respect was no longer optional, and his quiet act of empathy had become the beacon for an entire industry. Nana Ellis emerged from the jet bridge into the warm glow of Schiphol's terminal, her steps measured and deliberate. Around her, travelers paused, luggage wheels stilled, conversations hushed, and heads turned. The air hummed with the echoes of what had transpired at 36,000 feet. An unprecedented ethics override, 47 flights grounded, and a global pact forged in mid-flight. She walked slowly, the modest pecan pie tote swinging gently at her side. Passengers she'd never met bowed their heads in quiet respect. A flight attendant from another airline paused to remove her cap, an unspoken salute. Even the bustling crowd of disembarking travelers made room, creating a silent aisle that led her forward. Nana paused at the terminal exit, camera flashes flickering like distant stars. Reporters leaned from behind velvet ropes, whispering questions she could not hear, but she paid them no mind. Her gaze drifted to the overhead departure boards, where flights no longer appeared in red alert, but in normal green. The crisis had been resolved. The lesson had been learned. A lone security officer stepped forward, offering Nana a small bouquet of white lilies, symbolic of dignity and purity. She accepted them with a gentle smile, tucking the stems into her tote. To her, these were reminders that respect and empathy were the real currencies of the skies, far more precious than any ticket class or VIP badge. As she moved through the gate, Jonas joined her, certificate in hand and growing confidence in his posture. They walked side by side, the architect of change and its first ambassador, leaving behind a cabin that would never be the same. Behind them, the terminal staff whispered reassurances to returning passengers. "Everything's fine now. Go on with your journey." Nana and Jonas paused in the arrival hall, offering a final nod to one another. In that moment,
The weight of her life's work settled softly around them. She reached into her tote, withdrawing one last pecan pie, unwrapped now, fragrant, and handed it to Jonas. "For the road," she said, her voice warm and quiet. "Remember what this means." Jonas's eyes lit up. "I will," he replied, tucking the pie safely under his arm. Nana turned toward the automatic doors, pausing as they swept open. Beyond lay the city, Amsterdam's canals and centuries-old facades awaiting her return. She inhaled deeply, tasting the crisp air mixed with distant notes of rain and tulips. This world below was connected to the one above by countless shared flights, shared stories, and now shared principles. As she stepped into the flowing crowd, a gentle voiceover seemed to rise above the hum. "Respect isn't granted by a uniform. It's owed to every human soul." The words drifted through the terminal's open spaces, a final chord to the journey. Nana Ellis pressed forward, framed by the arriving and departing travelers, no longer just an elderly passenger, but a quiet authority whose legacy would guide every flight to come. Have you ever witnessed someone being disrespected in public? Share your story below. Your experience might inspire change.